The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
Then they came to Capernaum, and on the Sabbath Jesus entered the synagogue and taught. People were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as their scribes. In their synagogue was a man with an unclean spirit. He cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." Jesus rebuked him and said, "Quiet, come out of him." The unclean spirit convulsed him, and with a loud cry came out of him. All were amazed and asked one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." His fame spread everywhere throughout the whole region of Galilee. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Cleanliness has always been a concern for us, but kind of got into high gear with COVID. And it seems every year now there's a new illness that we have to watch out for, be concerned about. We've become conscious of washing our hands and sanitizing surfaces. In the time of Jesus, in any biblical times, being unclean had a much more significant meaning. Being unclean didn't just mean having dirty hands. It meant being unholy. And could put a person in a dangerous position. There were serious consequences for being unclean, up to even death. There were many ways a person could become unclean. Among them was simply eating something unclean, having a skin disease or bleeding, touching a dead body or touching a dead animal could make someone unclean. People who were unclean were supposed to separate themselves from others, because just being around someone unclean could make you unclean. And you couldn't approach God if you were unclean. Those who were unclean had to take upon themselves the task of making themselves pure. That it always involved a period of time of waiting. It could be as little as until evening in a minor case, could be longer, like 8 days in more serious cases. Purification involved ritual washings and atoning sacrifices. In our gospel passage, Jesus was approached by a man with an unclean spirit. Now, according to their laws, he should have separated himself from others so as not to make anyone else unclean. That was the way they dealt with that situation. They banished the person who was unclean so no one else would be affected. It was up to that person, as I said, to purify themselves in order to come back. Jesus had a different view of things. He came into this world to say that, to tell the people, they are holy because God made them holy. It wasn't that this person was unclean, it was the spirit that possessed them. So Jesus banished the spirit so that the person could remain. Jesus comes to us right where we are. He comes into the midst of the craziness of our lives. And he tells us that we are holy because God made us holy. He casts out all the demons we face. His presence casts out fear and anxiety. It casts out selfishness and competition. He is more powerful than anything the world can throw at us. Jesus tells us that he speaks to us in the Word, and he nourishes us in the Eucharist, and he tells us that we are. We always have been, and we always will be God's holy and beloved sons and daughters.